Dublin's crime. Godfather, the life and death of Eamon Kelly. And Kelly, who was born in 1947 in the Summerhill neighborhood of Dublin, would go on to become one of the most renowned figures in the history of criminal activity in Ireland. Kelly's early life was marked by adversity to the extent that she was brought up in a working-class household in the midst of the poverty and social unrest that existed in the inner city of Dublin. His mother stayed at home to take care of the family while his father worked, and his father was employed at a dock. Kelly was exposed to the more negative aspects of his environment at a young age because he was grown up in Summerhill, which is characterized by economic instability and the harsh reality of daily living. It was not out of any lofty goal that Kelly became involved in small crime when she was a teenager. Rather, it was out of necessity. His name began to travel throughout the underground of the city as a resourceful and cunning young offender. He became accustomed to committing small-time crimes and street-level hustles as part of his daily routine. The intrinsic leadership aptitude and knack for strategy that Kelly possessed set him apart from other individuals who were involved in criminal activity during that time period. In a culture where violence and mistrust were the norm, he was already aware of the significance of relationships, loyalty, and prudence even when he was still a young man. It was because of this that he was able to establish a network of relationships with more experienced and seasoned criminals who began to recognize in him the potential for something more significant. As the 1970s approached, Kelly had already established a strong presence among Dublin's criminal underworld. Thefts of a lesser degree were followed by more serious acts, such as armed robbery and organized heists, which he ultimately committed. A growing number of people came to recognize him as a diligent planner and an efficient operator. Kelly took a calculated approach to illegal activity, in contrast to the majority of criminals who are irresponsible or driven by instinct. He managed to cultivate his strength in a stealthy manner while remaining undetected by law enforcement and evading their scrutiny. It was his involvement in extortion and smuggling that solidified his position as a rising power in the city's criminal hierarchy. His influence grew as a result of his involvement in these activities. One of the most significant turning points in Kelly's ascent to prominence was when he became affiliated with the Irish National Liberation Army, INLA. There was no hiding the fact that the INLA was involved in organized crime, despite the fact that it was a political group. The relationship that Kelly formed with this organization not only provided him with safety, but it also allowed him to expand his influence into paramilitary circles, which in turn provided him with access to resources, weapons, and worldwide networks. These connections would later prove to be extremely important to the growth of his empire. Kelly also began teaching a new generation of criminals during this time period. These individuals included personalities such as Aon the Don Dunn and Martin Marlowe Hyland, both of whom would go on to become prominent roles in Ireland's underworld in their own right. Kelly made certain that his legacy would last well beyond his own time by ensuring that his protege would carry on his work. At the beginning of the 1990s, when Ireland was beginning to feel the effects of a growing drug crisis, Kelly identified an opportunity that might be extremely lucrative. Kelly was quick to capitalize on the burgeoning demand for cocaine in Ireland, which had already spread over sections of Europe from one region to another. In order to direct his attention toward drug trafficking, he orchestrated his first significant operation, which consisted of smuggling 1 kilogram of high-grade cocaine into the country. At the time, this operation was estimated to be worth approximately 50,000 euros. His criminal career entered a new phase at this point, one that would propel him to the highest level of Ireland's organized crime scene. This event marked the beginning of this new phase. Not only did he deal in cocaine, but he also dealt in an assortment of other drugs. As time went on, he expanded his business to include heroin and ecstasy, establishing worldwide links with drug gangs and ensuring a consistent supply of illicit substances. Kelly was able to stay one step ahead of law enforcement for a number of years. This was made possible by his ability to oversee a broad, covert, and well-funded network. On the other hand, growing power brought heightened scrutiny. Kelly found himself under increasing strain from both the authorities and rival gangs, as the violence that surrounded drug territories became more intense. Kelly was released from prison in 1998, having served time for drug-related offenses, and he promptly resumed his place in the criminal hierarchy after his release. In addition to expanding his sphere of influence once more, He renewed past alliances. On the other hand, the criminal landscape had shifted, and new players were coming into the picture, especially with factions such as the Real Irish Republican Army, RIRA, which was a splinter group from the Irish National Liberation Army, INLA. Rivalries became more intense. At this point, these former allies regarded Kelly as a potential danger to their interests. The difficulties were only exacerbated by the fact that he was romantically involved with Desi O'Hare, a very violent personality in the criminal underworld. A number of attempts were made to take Kelly's life, one of which was a dramatic attempt to kill her that was unsuccessful in 2010. This attempt occurred in Chester, Dublin in 2010, when a gunman's firearm malfunctioned during an ambush. The number of Kelly's days was limited. On December 4, 2012, the power struggle that had been going on for a long time in Dublin's underground finally reached its peak. The gunman who ambushed Kelly and shot him 3 times in the chest is believed to have been affiliated with the nascent Irish Republican Army, IRA. Kelly was shot outside of his home in Chester. The blow came on suddenly and proved lethal. It was a violent finish to a career that had defined the city's organized crime for decades, and his death marked the end of an era in Ireland that had been characterized by illicit activity. There was a great deal of disorder in the aftermath of Kelly's murder. His passing created a void that a number of criminal organizations tried to fill, which resulted in additional violence and fights for dominance from those involved. He was able to maintain his influence despite the fact that his empire eventually fell apart. Not only did he assist in the construction of structures, but he also taught individuals and employed strategies that continued to reverberate throughout the Irish criminal world. Anne Kelly's life continues to serve as a grim reminder of the harsh realities that are associated with organized crime. His story is one of survival, ambition, and the consequences of one's actions, beginning with the hopeless streets of Summerhill and culminating in the heights of power in Dublin's underworld in Dublin. His legacy serves as a cautionary story about the cost of power and the fragility of allegiance in a world dominated by crime. His name is mentioned with a mixture of terror and admiration in certain circles, but his legacy also serves as a cautionary tale. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.